Northern Ireland is rarely out of the news. From the beginning of what is known as the Troubles in 1969 to the IRA ceasefire of 1994, reporting on Northern Ireland has always required a certain level of sensitivity. So how did we arrive at the situation we have today? In 1920, the state of Northern Ireland was created when the 6 counties, Fermanagh, Tyrone, Derry, Antrim, Down and Armagh, 6 counties of Ulster, were granted their own government within the United Kingdom. The Northern Ireland state was mainly Protestant and was ruled by Protestant political parties, and during the 1960s a Catholic civil rights movement developed.
Young boys dragged off to prison for 6 months jail sentences, and when they couldn't do that quick enough, internment.
In 1969, the British Army was sent in to calm the civil unrest, sparking off what we now know as the Troubles, a very violent period between the nationalist and unionist traditions. So what is nationalism? Noel Doran, editor of the Irish News, tells us.
Nationalism is essentially the tradition within Ireland which aspires towards a united Ireland without a connection to Britain, without a connection to London.
And what is unionism?
Unionism is the tradition which wants to maintain the union between Northern Ireland and Great Britain and maintain the link with London and the British monarchy.
So who are the main parties?
The main parties in Northern Ireland are the Democratic Unionist Party, the DUP, the party of Ian Paisley, and on the other side of the divide, Sinn Féin, led by Gerry Adams, which is the party of a united Ireland essentially. The other 2 main parties are the Ulster Unionist Party, led by Reg Empey, and the SDLP, led by Mark Durkan.
So who are the IRA?
Well, the Irish Republican Army reflects the Republican paramilitary tradition. The Provisional IRA's campaign began in the late 1960s in opposition to British rule in Northern Ireland. They were in conflict with the British Army and the police force. They were also in conflict with loyalist paramilitaries. In 1994, paramilitary ceasefires were introduced on both the loyalist and the Republican side. The Provisional IRA has largely faded away into the background, leaving Sinn Féin to dominate the Republican movement and to move towards a position whereby it may well move into a partnership administration with the DUP at Stormont.
In 2002, the Irish and British governments began working closer together to push forward the issue of self-governing, and last September there was a significant breakthrough with the St Andrews Agreement. So what did happen at St Andrews?
The 2 governments, the British government and the Irish government, after a series of other initiatives, brought together the main parties at St Andrews in Scotland to try and hammer out a revised deal. It looked as though the prospects were bleak, but eventually the 2 governments came up with a set of proposals which they have published and put before the parties, and the parties have given a generally positive response to without completely committing themselves to supporting those proposals. So the parties are now discussing internally what their view of those proposals might be, and there's reasonable optimism but not total certainty that the St Andrews Agreement will result in a return to devolved government, in effect a government administration at Stormont involving all the main political parties here.
So with a devolved government looking more likely, who are the people we should be looking out for in the coming months? Dan Keenan, Northern Ireland political editor with the Irish Times, tells us.
The new arrangements for the executive at Stormont is a little unlike what most people would be used to already. Instead of having 1 person in charge of government, we would have 2, and it's 2 people holding a joint office. The first of those would be referred to as the First Minister, and the second is called the Deputy First Minister. But they actually have equal status, and the 2 of them, 2 office holders, perform the one job. And that's the whole idea, to copper fasten this idea of shared arrangements involving a unionist and a nationalist. The main players to look out for in the next few months would be the Reverend Ian Paisley. He's been around for a very long time now. He's been in politics for over 40 years and he's a man of 80 years of age himself. He could very well emerge from this process as First Minister. He'll be working alongside the chief negotiator from Sinn Féin, Mr Martin McGuinness. Those are the people that you want to see shaking hands on the steps of Stormont come next March if everything goes according to plan. There's a very complicated timetable regarding the implementation of the St Andrews Agreement, and it's spread over numerous months. The Unionists and Sinn Féin and the other parties will come together at Stormont and form a new executive, a new government for Northern Ireland. It's also round about that time that the people of Northern Ireland will be asked to vote on this new agreement, to give it their assent.